Angola yo, Angola yo, Angola yo, Angola yo, Angola yo. Amandla, Amandla, long live the Freedom Charter, long live. I-Freedom Charter thina sobuya nayo. Le Freedom Charter thina sobuya. Oskokele, Oskokele tambo, Oskokele, Oskokele tambo. Nge-Freedom Charter thina sobuya nayo. Le Freedom Charter Auskokele, Auskokele tambo, Auskokele, Auskokele tambo. I-Freedom Charter sobuya nayo. Le Freedom Charter Auskokele, Auskokele tambo, Auskokele, Auskokele tambo. Emazweni, iyobakal, emazweni, emazweni. Iyobakala emazweni. I-Freedom Charter, I-Freedom Charter, I-Freedom Charter, I-Freedom Charter. Emazweni, 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 emazweni. Bakalangayo, 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 bakalangayo. I-Freedom Charter, I-Freedom Charter, I-Freedom Charter, I-Freedom Charter. Emazweni, 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 emazweni. Le Freedom Charter, I-Freedom Charter, I-Freedom Charter, I-Freedom Charter. Bakalanga emazweni, bakalanga emazweni, bakalanga emazweni, bakalanga emazweni. I-Freedom Charter, I-Freedom Charter, I-Freedom Charter, I-Freedom Charter. Bakalangayo, 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 bakalangayo. Viva President President Ramaphosa, viva! Long live the Tripartite Alliance, long live! Malibongwe, igama lamakhosikazi, roar young lions, roar! Roar young lions, roar! Long live the fighting spirit of Oliver Tambo, long live! Thank you very much, comrades. We are now connected. Kuzo zonke i-provinces that are part of this anniversary of the Freedom Charter. Sizoqala manje ngeprogram yethu. Sibingelele ama-comrades wase-Limpopo. Sibingelele ama-comrades wase-KZN, Moses Mabhida. Sibingelele ama-comrades wase-Free State. Sibingelele ama-comrades wase-Eastern Cape, the host. I'm going to invite our member of the Provincial Executive Committee, who is going to be a co-program director. We appreciate. So siyajabula ukuthi ama-comrades abe connect, and Comrade Math will indicate as and when other provinces are connecting. I'm going to invite her on behalf of the hosting PEC to come and start the program. Mina was just a curtain raiser. Amandla, long live the NC, long live.
Hey, Zindabeni. Saselosaka. Awubheke manje mfowethu. Seliyashona. Hey, Zindabeni. Saselosaka. Ubothatha nansi AK. Shaya uthudule. Konke lezinto. Nangamabhulu. Ubothatha nansi AK. Shaya uthudule. Konke lezinto. Ngalele idlembe. Oliver Tambo Lisandra. Oliver Tambo. Oliver Tambo Isandra. Oliver Tambo Usibambu ngasiyekele hamba isandla. Oliver Tambo. Oliver Tambo hamba isandla. Tambo usibambu ngasiyekele hamba isandla. Oliver Tambo. Githi Oliver Tambo hamba isandla. Tambo usibambu ngasiyekele hamba isandla. Oliver Tambo. Oliver Tambo hamba isandla. Tambo usibambu ngasiyekeli hamba isandla. Oliver Tambo. Oliver Tambo hamba isandla. Tambola. Oh, gee.
Amandla. Viva ANC SICP COSATU Alliance, viva. Viva ANC SICP COSATU Alliance, viva. Viva Sanco, viva. Viva Sanco, viva. Roar, young lions, roar. Roar, young lions, roar. Malibongwe. Igama lamakhosikazi. Viva the Veterans League, viva. Viva the Veterans League, viva. Qina ANC, qina. Mayiqini ANC, mayiqine. Mayikhulu ANC, mayikhule. Phambili ngomanyano le-ANC, phambili. Enkosi kakhulu, my co-program director, Comrade Nomvula Monkonyana. Mandisibulisele kakhulu kuzo zonke inkokheli ezikhoyo from across South Africa eziconnectileyo namhlanje, and I am told you are the main connection area as the Eastern Cape. Phambili, the home of the legends, phambili. Ndibulise ke bonke co-program director bethu kwezi provinces zonke kwezi ndawo Comrade Nomvula bethetha ngazo ukuba kuconnectwe kuzo across South Africa. Ndibulise phambi koba ndibulise wonke umuntu mandiqale ndithi ndicela siphakame, because there is a tragedy that just occurred in our province where almost 17 young kids died last night in a tavern. May we please all of us rise and observe a moment of silence. Enkosi kakhulu. Mandithathe lithuba ndibulise the representative of the traditional leadership of our province, uNkosazana Mvula Nonkonyana, who is representing both Contralesa and the House of Traditional Leaders today, the clergy, the ANC-led alliance as led by you, Provincial Chair, the leagues as led by the Veterans League, VC of this legendary university of ours, and the entire leadership of the University of Forte. Deployees to all levels of our government, branches of the African National Congress, our panelists, good day. I think it's still morning. Good morning. Yes, we are starting with our program now, and as I said before, we are connected to the entire nation because today is a great day, a day when we reached a turning point in the history of South Africa. Before we start with our program, allow me to invite the choir of the University of Forte to lead us with the national anthem. And I ask that we all rise, and I'll ask all men to take off their hats and everybody to stand still. We mustn't move up and down when we are singing our national anthem. Thank you very much. Over to you, choir. Maybe it's giving me so much. That volunteer has rescued us. It's always nice to have a backup in the case of need. Malibongwe, igama lamakhosikazi. Phambili nge-Freedom Charter, phambili. We are now going to invite our ANC Provincial Chairperson, Comrade Lubabalo Oscar Mabuyane, to welcome everybody across the country.
Sabashiya bazale kaya Sangena kwamanyama amanyamazwe ungekho nomama silwe inkululeko Sabashiya bazale kaya Sangena kwamanyamazwe amanyamazwe Vuma, vuma mfowethu amanyamazwe Chio makomanda Chio makirila
Amandla Gawethu Viva ANC, viva Long live Freedom Charter, long live Viva SACP, viva Viva Kosatu, viva Viva Sanko, viva Thank you very much, Program Director. If it's me who caused the delay, I want to profusely apologize, Program Directors. If it's not me, thank you. We had to wake up on the very terrible sad news in East London that I had to go to first and look at families in the eyes that are really going through a very terrible moment of losing their kids. Program Directors Umam Kize from the National Executive Committee, Sis Nomvula, and also Comrade Meth from the Provincial Executive Committee. The national leadership present is led by Comrade David Mhlaba, who's going to be our main speaker today. The Provincial Executive Committee members, as Koyo Apa, I've seen a couple of them already. I know some of them. Comrade Nomvula are in Port Elizabeth. We've got a by-election there. So a lot of people are already on the ground with a couple of programs. I left some on the crime scene there at Scenery Park. Comrade Tigana and others, they were coming this way, and I said they must not come, they must remain there, because Minister Beki Cele is on his way there. Greetings to the leadership and membership of the ANC across the length and breadth of our country, as we were told that all other provinces are connected to us. Leadership, leagues, I've seen veterans leagues here, I've seen youth league, I've seen women's league as well, leadership of our alliance, I've seen COSATU secretary, I've seen chairperson of Sanko as well here, I've seen chairperson of SACP. Other comrades might be here as well. The leadership from the religious community that are forming part of our MDM structures, also from the chaplains, nenkokheli ezezwe lakwethu unkosi uzanemvula ukhona apha phakathi kwethu ongu-chairperson we-Contra-Lesser in our province. The Vice Chancellor of our University of Fort Hare, and all other representatives from other universities. I spoke to the Vice Chancellor from USU, and sending me a message that you will be sending a representative. Here, I think the DVC is here from WUSU, Dr. Dada. Am I putting it right, Doc? Thank you very much. We do really appreciate your presence here. Comrades and friends that are here as well, you are all acknowledged. Comrades, without much ado, let me extend our warm revolutionary greetings to all of you on behalf of the Eastern Cape Provincial Executive Committee. We are honored as the Eastern Cape Province to host the 67th commemoration of the adoption of the Freedom Charter, a blueprint produced by the masses of our people that shaped the democratic South Africa we live in today. Comrades, as we commemorate the 67th year of the Freedom Charter, today we unfortunately woke up to the devastating news of the incident that took place in East London nightclub where 20 young lives were found dead. I mean very young, others minors. Although the cause of the death is unknown, the horrific incident is something that should have not happened, which is why we have instructed the law enforcement authorities to urgently investigate the matter with the aim of ensuring that whoever is behind the killing is brought to book. Using young people in Youth Month, it says something. What an irony. It's a very terrible situation. I've seen it myself with my actually naked eyes. What happened in the early hours of today should be a cause for reflection on a number of issues that contribute to the social ills that are confronting our society today. One of them is the fact that during the Youth Month, young people lost their lives whilst engaging in entertainment activities involving the consumption of alcohol and a substance. I think they have a problem of this substance abuse. As the ANC in the province, we call for all parents and members of the community to allow for the processes of investigation to unfold without interruption. We commit to ensure that no stone is left unturned as we get to uncover what actually transpired. Comrades, on occasions such as this one, it is important that we go down memory lane to remind ourselves how the Freedom Charter came about and why. Maqabane, isizathu esiphambili sokwenziwa kwale Freedom Charter akufuneki sisijonge phaya kwi-1950s. I-Freedom Charter yazalwa sisono sokuqala sokuphucwa kwabantu bakuthi umhlaba, nto leyo yakhokelela kwiimfazwe ezilithoba ezaliwa kweli phondo phaa kwiminyaka elikhulu. Siyayazi yonke lo mbali leyo. When land was stolen from our people, that was the beginning of a series of other violations of their rights, such as forced removals, displacement of families, and migrant labor system, to mention a few. Other transgressions by the apartheid regime, such as past laws, segregation laws, agitated the masses of our people to renew resistance to oppression. Hence, in the 1950s, a new onslaught of struggle against apartheid was waged, which culminated in the development of the Freedom Charter. The Freedom Charter created the commandments on how the struggle would be fought and outlined a new direction on how our liberation would be achieved. The Freedom Charter gave birth to significant political developments such as the Pondo Revolt, the establishment of Umkhonto weSizwe, the APLA, and formation of Workers' Union to wage the struggle in the shop floors, and later June 16 uprisings. In essence, the Freedom Charter was a vision to reconstruct what our people had before the arrival of colonialists. It is a vision that led us to the 1994 democratic breakthrough and adoption of a new constitution in 1996. The preamble of our constitution was drawn from the Freedom Charter. It spelled out how we wanted to undo the painful past, how we wanted to govern ourselves, and how we envisioned our future. On this 67th commemoration of the adoption of the Freedom Charter, we must reflect honestly on whether we have achieved all the demands that the Freedom Charter promised our people. The response to this important question lies in how we answer the following questions. Are the people governing? Are all our people enjoying equal rights? Are all our people sharing the country's wealth? Is the land shared amongst those who work it? Are all our people equal before the law? Are all our people enjoying equal human rights? Is there work for all our people? Are the doors of learning open? Are there houses, security, and comfort for all? And lastly, is there peace and friendship amongst people and the peoples of the world? The answer to most of these questions, program directors, is affirmative, and various statistics conducted by States SA and other independent bodies agree that generally there is a tremendous improvement in the socio-economic conditions of South Africans than it was the case before 1994. Here in our province, where most of the colonial and apartheid carnages were rife, life in democratic South Africa is far better than life in the apartheid South Africa. Ndiveke nabanye abantu abebeke baphatha xa bethetha ibe ngathi khona abebeke bayenza babehlulwe literally bephethe phofu i-homelands bohlulwa completely kodwa xa ubamamela bethetha namhlanje ezitivini ngathi khona ebhetele babekhe bayenza. So the reality is that ANC has done and the work is continuing. We all understand that the foundation has been laid and the work has begun. But we are the first to admit that we could have done more to transform our society. Along the way, we have made big mistakes, and one of those mistakes is that comrades who were supposed to be champions of implementing the Freedom Charter were sidetracked by personal interest, which are leading to internal fights in the movement. We've seen the rise on the rapacious behavior, etc. The Freedom Charter was meant to improve the living condition of the people and not leaders. We have left people outside, hence elections after elections, we are losing electoral support. This is why we have embarked on a process to unite and renew our movement to be truly an instrument for transformation in the hands of our people. This is the only way that the ANC can be able to lead the process of reversing the injustices of the colonial and apartheid past, which disrupted the development of our country and our province. Part of this requires, comrades, that reconstruct and recover our economy to serve all the people. An important aspect of that is attracting investment to the province as part of our developmental agenda. As such, we welcome the announcements, comrades, made by TNPA to embark on a 9.1 billion 7-year infrastructure program in our province. We've been fighting with Transnet, engaging Transnet to say we should not be where we are if you look at your East London port. We have not been developing that port for 50 years. We are happy that in the last few days TNPA, a subsidiary of Transnet, has made these bold plans to really come and really disrupt the status quo as far as development is concerned in our province. We really welcome that. It's a very bold statement, which we think that will be able to help also to completely change the socio-economic outlook in our province. Comrades, we must renew the ANC, and the renewal of the ANC is fundamental for full realization of the demands of the Freedom Charter. It is not about a step aside only, as some would probably go around and create that impression. It's about renewing and transforming ourselves so that we are fit for the purpose to the remaining phase of the National Democratic Revolution. Comrades, masikhulele uxanduva. Amalungu e-ANC onke makanciphe khona ukuze i-ANC ikhule. Comrade Nomvula, you are part of the organizing in Luthuli. It is not good what we are seeing. Conference of the ANC during critical time spent 3 days refusing to adopt credentials. I think going to the national conference and beyond, we must really relook at that. We need serious reforms around this issue of credentials because we don't pay attention to the people's needs. Even Gauteng, that we are so marginal on. Comrade Mandashe says we have got majority. We don't have majority in Gauteng. We are governing the province with one person in the legislature. So we have lost metros, but we spend all the days with intra-dynamics of the ANC looking at ourselves more than what people are looking for. We've got to change that, comrades. Towards the 2017 national conference, as this province, we made a call. that it is high time that we relook at how the leadership of the ANC is elected. So this issue of delegates being nominated by branches, members of the ANC, that time has arrived to be allowed to participate as a member fully on how to elect the national leadership of the ANC, the provincial leadership of the ANC, as we do with branches. Branches is members themselves who go and participate to elect the BECs. It should be like that in all other levels of the organization. We've got to renew the ANC, we've got to change the ANC. Come 2024, if we continue with this trend, I can tell you, ANC is finished, ANC is doomed. But we've got to change it. We are that generation, comrades, that must discover its mission and fulfill it. It's going to be important that we do that. As I learned, program directors, without wasting your time, with those few words, comrades, as the Eastern Cape PEC, we welcome everyone to this important historic event in a very historical institution, the University of Fort Hare, my alma mater. And now green auditorium. We spent some time here, we developed here, we became what we are because of these universities and many other leaders who came before us, who came through these doors of learning. So it's important that, comrades, we use this opportunity to send a clear message to all of us that let's continue, comrades, to pursue and advance the national democratic revolution. Let's continue, comrades, to pursue our Freedom Charter because it is that blueprint that gave hope and really guaranteed the better future for people of our country. Thank you very much.
Amanda. Enkosi kakhulu, comrades. Thank you very much, Comrade Provincial Chairperson, for welcoming all of us. Allow me to acknowledge the NEC as led by our own President, Cyril Ramaphosa, all the NEC members who are across the nation, and in particular those who are with us here, Comrade Mhlaba and Comrade Mhlaba, and all other leaders. Also the leadership of the provinces across our nation and regional leaders, including our regional leaders from the province who are in our midst, and all the structures, the MDM structures, in particular the PYA. Inyanga yabantu abatsha le. Phambili ngabantu abatsha phambili. Xa sidibene apha namhlanje, I think le nto yoba we are the home of legends. Siyayiphila because le nto igqitywa ukuthethwa apha nguComrade Chairperson. We are told by history that it started all here in Queenstown in the 42nd conference of the ANC in 1953, led then by Chief Albert Luthuli as our General President, and the motion or the formal mover of a Congress of the People that must be convened, which was later convened in 1955, was done by our own comrade, Z.K. Matthews, and it happened in the Eastern Cape. Isn't that great? That decision, that resolution was taken here, and later a conference was convened in Johannesburg, Kliptown, which adopted the Freedom Charter. Thank you so much, Comrade Chairperson. We are now going to invite our host, our VC, Professor Buhlungu, who will be welcoming us to the university virtually. Over to you, Prof.
welcome all of you in the province physically, but also to welcome South Africa to Fort Hare for this very great event. It is, there's a good reason, like Program Director you've indicated just now. It's fitting and proper that the University of Fort Hare is the place that anchors this 67th anniversary of the Freedom Charter. I'll give you just a couple of reasons why it is important that it's held at Fort Hare. First of all, we are a 106-year-old organization, or institution of higher years. For more than 100 years, we've been producing, and we have intellectuals and leaders, and we have been the intellectual birthplace for liberation ideas. We have produced leaders across the political spectrum, very, very important. We have produced leaders in other fields too. And those who are on campus today, you will not be surprised, therefore, when you walk down Oliver Tambo Walk, and then you take a turn. This is history. It's engraved and etched on the campus in our great university's Alice campus. But most importantly, and this is where the program director made reference to, that one of the brains, and I'm not saying the only, but one of the brains behind the Freedom Charter was our first graduate. Graduated in 1924, first graduate of the university, 1924. Who later became Professor Z.K. Matthews. He was one, as I say, he was one of the kind of brains behind the idea of a Freedom Charter. In the lead up to the Congress of the People in 1955, there's Z.K. Matthews' family home, which is in Alice, the town of Alice, and of course, the Alice railway station. All of those became kind of, you saw the hives of activity, gatherings, and ultimately travel from Alice Station to Kliptown in Johannesburg. And so we have, in a small way, but extremely important way, we believe that we as the community, we as the university, we as a town, and of course we as a province, we've played a very significant role in the discussion, development, and ultimately the adoption of the freedom. We're proud, and we're here to say, therefore, welcome to this university. We're not hearing about these ideas for the first time. They've been with us, and we have been at the forefront. I should just, while I have this few minutes, Chairperson, I should also say the other good reason why it's important that an event of this kind, a historical event of this kind, is held at the university, or anchored at the University of Fort Hare, is that we, the custodian of all liberation movement archives. The first one and the largest proportion, of course, are the archives of the ANC. But we also host the archives of other liberation movements, the PAC, the Black Consciousness Movement, and so on. Once again, that bears testimony to the fact that we are home of many people, many shades of opinion, and of course many political currents in the country. I should also add that of the ANC archives, about 70% have now been digitized, so they are available digitally. So just 1 minute, therefore, to invite all scholars, young and old, scholars of liberation history, scholars of other related fields. There's a wealth that's sitting right on that Alice campus to broaden our horizons about the struggle, the meaning of the struggle, the history of the struggle, the players, the different players, and how things changed. Fort Hare is the base. We've got it all there. And again, I invite people to come and not only come and study and look at the archives, but also to come and study at the university. The conference, or rather the activities today, are marked by a series of events, speeches, panel sessions, panel discussions, song and celebration. And so it's not for me to venture into the substance of these things, because I think there are better placed people to do this. Suffice it only for me to say that the challenge for all of us, South Africans, is to ensure that we close the gap. We close the gap between the noble and lofty ideals of the Freedom Charter on the one side and the lived reality of South Africans on the other. That gap needs to be closed. And I don't think anyone will disagree with that. That therefore, may the panel discussions there also therefore, among many other reflections, reflect on how that gap is closed. We have an obligation, Program Director, to repay the sacrifices of past and current generations by ensuring that the goals of the Freedom Charter are achieved. Now, for those of us who are in education, the challenge and the obligation is to ensure that not only do we keep the doors of learning open, but also that the learning takes place in conducive conditions and that the quality of that education is of a high standard. The towns and villages in which we conduct education, whether it's school education or higher education, those towns and villages must be clean. They must have water. They must have proper recreational area facilities, and they must be crime-free. As a university, we have decided to play our part towards all of this, ensuring that to play a role by embarking on a renewal or revitalization project for the university, revitalizing across the spectrum, whether it's in areas of finance, administration, the academic projects, and various other fields. So we are equal to the task, and this project we call the Decade of Renewal 2020 to 2030. As I conclude, Chairperson, let me just say we are extremely excited and delighted that the organizers have chosen our university to anchor this event. And as I've said, it's fitting and proper, and we are equal to the task. We're also happy that South Africans are taking this time not only to celebrate the Freedom Charter, but also to reflect on that gap, on that glaring gap between aspirations of the Freedom Charter on the one side and the lived realities facing people and institutions on the other. With those words, Chairperson, let me conclude then by once again welcoming everyone and wishing all of you. And across the length and breadth of the country, I see we have all the 9 provinces. And across the length and breadth of the country, I see we have all the 9 provinces. And across the length and breadth of the country, I see we have all the 9 provinces. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me conclude there. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, kuchukuthi system ibuye late, that's why kune echo. When I give virtual meetings, if you've got 2 mics on, they do that. Apologies for that. Thank you very much, Prof. And we also appreciate you allowing to host this very important event in our history as South Africa and the African National Congress. The Freedom Charter proclaims that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, a statement of peace, unity, and inclusiveness, and that all shall be equal before the law, a statement of justice and fairness. It pledged to continue with the struggle until a new democratic order was put in place. Is it that not enough for us to celebrate as the South Africans and as the members of the ANC? Now allow me to invite the video clip to tell us about the Freedom Charter. Over to you, DJ. Hoping the sound will help us this time around. Thank you. Ubungekho mfazi ngeke ngabuyanga low volume. Siyabonga.
the laws that he introduced were becoming more and more draconian, in concept. At the same time, we felt, therefore, that it was necessary to have campaigns to offset this sort of thing and to bring people up to a higher form of struggle. And that is why we agreed upon having this Congress of the People.
In 1953, the Central Conference, the ANC comes up with the idea of a Congress of the People. Right? It takes on the Indian Congress welcoming the Congress of Democrats gets established, hadn't been established, they can't come in 1954, the Organizing Women's Federation. Right? In 1955, SACTO. So it's a continuous upward movement of the people participating in this struggle.
There was a broadening of approach to fashion of knowing we are now living with a situation where we must mobilize all people together. These are the ideas which led to the Congress of the People, which when it was formed, you included even the Nationalist Party to come up with something like you have today. We call it what like a better. Those are the ideas which developed. The National Action Council, representing the ANC, the Indian Congress, Common People's Organization, and the Congress of Democrats organized a campaign to collect people's demands and commitment throughout South Africa. There are plenty of preparation. It's door to door, coming to a house, telling people what we tell you, doing collecting demands, which is the highest way of exercising democracy. That campaign was intense. That campaign was also intense. We reached out to people in areas which had not been touched before. It was very hard work, and we did not have the sophisticated machinery that we have today to reach out to the people. We used to actually walk by foot.
Those were footages of the comments made by our veterans about the background towards the adoption, because on this particular day, 67 years ago, it was all about the adoption of the Freedom Charter, a journey that had evolved over years, as the chairperson of the province has also alluded to that fact. So our journey towards the emancipation of our people in South Africa is not an event, it continues to be a process. Amandla, let's gallop, comrades and friends. We're going to now bring in the scene setting section, where we're going to have representatives of different sectors, just making a brief reflection, and we're going to appeal that each one of us who are in this category, we do not exceed at least 3 minutes. It's a pity I'm not like Umamunos Viwe, so I do not have that, but I believe in you. Dinitembile Bantabatala. So without any further waste of time, I'm going to bring Nkosi Umvelo Nonkonyana from Contrales. I was telling him, Ditini wokloken bizo Nonkonyana, ndingo mkako, and Shobananga nawe, Dungumukonyani mna. Chief.
Amaqabane asikhokela kule nkqubo yembali yokukhumbula umhla obalulekile kangaka 67 years ago. Comrade Nomvula Nonkonyana abe suthu bandimosha bafaka umo Nomhlobo wami, your late husband had accepted this. That indeed you are my wife. And now you are my wife by ungena custom. Nkosazana, Mamang. Comrades and friends, I think for the first and foremost, I must thank the organizers for having seen fit to extend the invitation to the institution of traditional leadership in South Africa through its progressive organization, the Congress of Traditional Leaders of South Africa. I rise to represent the royalty across our nation, particularly from this province, and bring to you all the revolutionary greetings from our kings, queens, and members of the royal family, as well as our communities that we lead. I know many of you know that before the colonialists came, this country was a country of milk and honey. I was told that on the 2nd of February, 1835, Lord Macaulay had this to say about us. I have traveled across the length and breadth of Africa. I have not seen one person who is a beggar, who is a thief. Such wealth I have seen in this country. Such high moral values, people of such caliber, that I do not think we would ever conquer this country unless we break the very backbone of this nation, which is her spiritual and cultural heritage. And therefore, I propose that we replace her old and ancient education system, her culture, for if the Africans think that all that is foreign and English is good and grateful than their own, they will lose their self-esteem, their native culture, and they will become what we want them, a truly dominated nation, close quote. Ndiphakama ke egameni labantwana bahle lokuthi okokuqala mbutho wesizwe, the African National Congress, nayo yonke imibutho edlalana ndawone nawo, nikhumbule uba ngomhla 8 kuJanuwari 1912 ngoba omkhulu nomakhulu abaninika ithemba kuni ngokuthi that national democratic revolution that was started by our forebears before the colonialists came, kuba elizwe liphethwe bubukhosi, sathemba nina. Yolonto nango 1955 xa kwakusenziwa lembali sasikhona. Yeka amakhumsha engazusibala kuba abanye ingakumbi inkokheli ezivwele okwenkowane ziyazilibale abantu ababekhona ngaphambili. Lo mbutho washiwa kuthi njengefa. Yolonto Mtaka Ramaphosa nesigqebe esilawulayo kuzwe lonke eweDiya Mabuya nesigqebe esilawulayo kweliphondo sinethemba elinini. Ewe asivani apha napha sizuthetha lonto namhlanje, kodwa ithemba lethu likuni. Ingale mini nganivuselela into yoba who really you are. Egameni ke labantwana bahle sinqwenela okuhle, kodwa inga izinto ezimbi ezenzekileyo nokungenelelwa kwabantu kusukela kwezi-askari nezi-askari ezikhoyo kungaphela, nikwazi into yokokuba niphathe ilizwe kakuhle, niqinisekile uba sikhona sibubukhosi kweli lizwe. Camakho.
Asibonge Nkosi Mokonyane. And appreciate also reminding us about where we're coming from as the movement and the role that this particular sector has played in the struggles, as alluded also in the welcoming remarks by the chairperson of the Eastern Cape. Let's move on and invite, and I'm not going to come to the podium, invite Balungile Sapo, Nokhosi Nongai, as well as Kwaiya Zituta, the Provincial Secretary of NAFCOC, and we will connect virtually to Buitumelo Tache, an author, the youngest councillor in the country, an activist of the Not In My Name movement, and a member of the Young Women's Desk. So let's then move on to Comrade Balungile. Kijima, show that you are young.
Thank you very much, Comrade Chair, to the leadership of the ANC, led by Comrade Oscar, leaders of the Alliance, leaders of the religious fraternity and all structures. Now, I will really take 3 minutes, Chair, as we celebrate this 67th anniversary. We really woke up with the devastating news of a number of young people that were found dead in a tavern, a place that, Comrade Oscar, is supposed to be a place of fun, but someone decided to turn it to something else. We're really pleased with our government to say whoever that done that must be brought to books. And further say we really need to strengthen our campaigns and system towards the substance abuse. If we don't attend to that now, it will be the end of this country. We convene, Chair, to this celebration of the Freedom Charter, which was the breakthrough in terms of unity towards the shared vision for a new democratic forces by all progressive forces. The ANC-led government, all progressive formations to craft a document which became the genesis of democratic aspirations. We all know that the Freedom Charter was just a base which had to be developed further when independence. This then means that this Freedom Charter was not a cast in a stone, it was a framework. We all know that struggles are born out of frustration, which are caused by those that are in authority. Our struggle was very brutal. Many people were killed and mass killings took place, and our leaders, Black in particular, those that were vocal in pushing for liberations, were killed, exiled and sent into long prison sentences. We are really saying those fallen giants must be celebrated regardless of their political affiliation. Comrade Oscar, we convened here receiving the reports of the very high unemployment rate of young people. Young people remains at home with qualifications and skills. and they are frustrated by the system called experience for them to get an access in getting employment. And this is very devastating because all these processes are led by the government that is led by this organization. We are really appealing to the ANC leaders to go and stand in the podium and speak about the unemployment. Makungabi ngathi umuntu xa ngayithethanga lonto uzoba irrelevant. But it must be the program that the ANC is committed towards it. Secondly, Chair, I heard UVC earlier on encouraging people to access the education system. The doors of the education sector, especially young intermediate in higher education, the gap is too wide from basic to the higher. We also really pleased with our government to please look in capacitating the TVET sector. The TVET sector must be the hub for skills development to bridge the gap between employment and giving an opportunity for young people to be self-employed. But then it will be done only if they are given access to acquire skills that they need to acquire. In those words, Chair, we are saying congratulations to the ANC for hosting this event. We are really hoping that the needs of young people are going to be taken care by this government. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, and Bulise Program Director Bobabini, NEC members under the leadership of President Cyril Ramaphosa, PEC members led by Oscar Mabuyane, the chairperson of Eastern Cape Province, REC members as Koyo Apa, including Amatole as the host, alliance partners and leagues, traditional leaders, distinguished guests, mayors, speakers, chief whips and councillors, comrades and friends. Allow me, on behalf of the ANC Women's League, PTT, to say revolutionary greetings. Comrades, today we are gathered here to commemorate the 67th anniversary of the Freedom Charter, 1955, which marked a different phase of our struggle. This marked a turning point in South Africa, where all South Africans, black and white, gathered collectively to express their justice demands for a free and democratic South Africa. This was neither not the first nor the last time South Africans and women in particular had gathered to express their collective demands. In 1954, women had gathered to form a Federation of South African Women as an organization that would pursue our agenda struggle and all patriarchal elements in our society. This was done with the understanding that our freedom will not be complete without the freedom of women from all the different kinds of oppression that they were faced with. As we celebrate these struggles, we must pay tribute to our heroines who defiantly led from the front. These include Omam Lilian Ngoni, Omam Albertina Sisulu, Omam Matikizela, and many more. In 2021, we commemorated the life and times of our heroine, Mama Charlotte Maxeke, as life would have been. She also hails from the same municipality that today we are hosting. In light of the above, we must firstly express our appreciation for the opportunity to participate in today's event as ANC Women's League of the Eastern Cape. It is an opportunity we don't take lightly and for granted. We also must appreciate the rightful recognition of the immense contribution that has been made by women in the pursuit of all Freedom Charter objectives. In 1994, the ANC has been pursuing a democratic project in the country. We will soon be 30 years since the democratic breakthrough. We must ask ourselves the following questions. To what extent has the ANC been successful in advancing this project? We know we are kujwa, we know kusetyenziwe, but there's still a lot to be done. What are the living conditions of women since this breakthrough? How much have we advised to realize both the Freedom Charter goals and our ability to link these to the emancipation of women and the broader society for the purposes of discussion. We will pay much attention to this last question. In conclusion, we have challenges. We are faced with a scourge of gender-based violence and femicide, and also drug abuse and alcohol. Njengoba sesivile into eyenzekileyo eBCM, abantwana abancinci abathe babandakanyeka ekuthi baswele imiphefumulo yabo ngenxa ye-substance abuse. And as women, siye savakalelwa this morning because ngomama abanenimba, xa kuthethwa ngomntu, kuthethwa ngomama, abantwana ngabethu, siyakucela i-justice system yethu namapolisa ayisondelele imeko eyenzeke eBuffalo City. Fortunately here, we've got umntanegazi from the House of Traditional Leaders, Utata Unkosi Nonkonyane, is here because traditional communities, specifically women, are still experiencing patriarchy. Siyacela ke the House of Traditional Leaders kunye noKhokta batshintshe imithetho ibe in line with the aspirations of the Freedom Charter. Malibongwe. Gama lamakhosikazi.
Wathinta abafazi. On time, on point. Malibongwe. Anditsho nto ngaba abanye bebese stage benditsho nje ukuthi nje. We're now going to connect to one of our young councillors, the youngest in the country, njengoba bendichilo, who is also an expert herself. She's going to make a 3-minute input herself. She has produced books, they are on Take a Lot. Her name is Buitumelo Tache from Tshwane. Thank you very much. We know Gauteng is having a congress, so they are the only province that is not connected like all of us, but they will have a representative when we deal with the clauses of the Freedom Charter. To me,
I think I just like the leaders of various structures and provinces that are here. I think I heard of Comrade Oscar Mahiani and the VC, Comrade Mhlaba. When it comes to the Freedom Charter in relation to young people, particularly in the 21st century, I think it's very important to note that as much as we acknowledge our torchbearers and those that came before us, we are also cognizant of the fact that there are a few failures that young people have been subjected to, and I think the previous two speakers spoke of how a lot of the injustices, socially and otherwise, are skyrocketing, such as unemployment and gender-based violence, to be specific. And I think that Oscar Mahiani also echoed most of my sentiments when it comes to the roles of learning and culture. I think it becomes very important that we ensure that we focus on never letting go of the mandate of fighting for decolonialized education and free education that is equal. I think, moreover, we need to look into ensuring that the Freedom Charter not only becomes implemented, but also we ensure that it appeals to young people who are currently living in a new era and in a new generation. And I think we need to ensure that we allow elders, as young people, we need to ensure that we allow those who have come before us to empower us, to educate us, and also to ensure that they invest in the activism that we take part in. But it's important for us as young people to ensure that we acknowledge where we come from and know what it is that are hitting to ensure that we equip ourselves to ensure that we are able to draft policies that will take us into a new future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to me. She's also a delegate at conference there in Gauteng. Thank you, Tumi. Now we're going to our panel of experts. We've got Advocate Tembeka Mukaitobi. We've got Mondeng Kasawe, Zamikaya Maseti, Simbulelo Kosani. She also has a bereavement, but again, as a young woman, she as a young activist, again, they show that this is their month, and they've all insisted that we'll connect virtually. Then we've got Professor Oscar van Heerden, who would also be here. Fellow panelists, we would want you to just make a reflection of the historical background and our journey towards Vision 2030, because ours is not a daily achievement or objective, but we intend to move in a manner that appreciates that ours is a protracted struggle. Let's look at that. Let's hear from yourselves. Let's also have an appreciation of how you envision the acceleration with a few years remaining towards Vision 2030, our national development plan, as well as we now go into the ANC's policy conference, because Comrade Mhlaba, Comrade Dia, and members of the ANC across the provinces, this is also a precursor to our policy conference. So you are given again an opportunity to give us some provision towards the policy conference, and finally at the December conference on areas that we need to improve, to adapt, to present, as we have heard from the leadership of the Youth League here in the Eastern Cape, about issues of education, issues of substance abuse, decolonization of education. We've heard from Kosi Nonkonyane about the issues of land, the respect of traditional authorities. We have heard from the ANC Women's League representing women about issues related to equality, to a non-racial, united and prosperous South Africa. We've had an appreciation of where we come from prior to 1912, but how do we then move on with the restoration of the dignity of the African majority? So, sizoqala ke ngokuthi sibize from the panelists who advocate Mukaitobi, if we could connect and give him an opportunity then to make that reflection.
I'm connected, I think. I don't know how long I have to speak, but in the invitation I was told that I have 10 minutes. So if I exceed the 10 minutes, that will not be intentional, but I hope to stick within the 10 minutes that have been allocated. I want to speak about the Freedom Charter and the land question. In April 1955, when the Freedom Charter was adopted, the Congress of the People then, before the ANC adopted the Charter, had rejected the idea of a colonizer and a colonized. What it accepted was that South Africa belongs to all who live in it. And although the focus of the Native Land Act of 1913 had been to impose racial restrictions on land ownership by Africans, the Charter's aim was to reverse this. But what would the Charter do? The Charter intended to end what would happen to the land. The Charter promised that the land would be redivided among all who work it. So the Charter was not intended to end private land ownership as such, but it intended to end the racialization of land ownership. But who would get the land under the Charter? The Charter promised that the land would go to those who work it. Who are those who work the land? The answer to this is not in the Charter. Perhaps at the time there was no need to elaborate. By 1955, South Africa was primarily an agricultural economy. Large scores of young men, African men, were driven to work as cheap labor in the farms. And which is why the Charter also promised to end cattle robbery, to abolish forced labor, and to abolish farm prisons. This is the promise of the Charter. But what is the experience of the Charter? The ANC became the government, or the majority party in government, in 1994. At that point, 86% of all farmland, 82 million hectares, was owned exclusively by a white minority that constituted 0.9% of the population. But this itself is to understate the problem. There were only 60,000 watts of agricultural land. When you contrast this with 13 million black people living in poverty-stricken conditions, crowded in homelands, with very tenuous rights to the land, the land disparity then becomes even more pronounced. Nelson Mandela's government signed into law the very first piece of legislation, the Restitution Act. This itself was a moment of revolution. So the primary focus of the ANC's historical struggle was to end land injustice. What do we know then about the last 28 years? 23 years after the ANC became government in 2017, it conducted its own land audit. What it found was astonishing. 72% of agricultural farmland is still owned by white people. Coloureds own only 15%, Indians 5%, and Africans only at 4%. And so, if you compare the 1994 picture with the 2017 picture, the difference is a meager 13%. Yet, the ANC has spent so much money on land. More than 60 billion rands has been invested on land reform. And the ANC has also passed apparently progressive laws. Something is not adding up. We are paying so much money. We have the most progressive laws, but we are achieving so little. Why is this the case? We have in research written about embedded corruption, inefficient institutions, elite capture. What we have not yet done is to interrogate the structure of the land reform program, to ask the difficult question, did we adopt the right structure for land reform? I began examining the structural constraints to land reform beyond institutional capture, beyond corruption, but to look deeper into whether the structure is compatible with an accelerated land reform program, which is at the heart of the Freedom Charter. Some of my reflections in this regard are contained in my recent book. Some were shared with the ANC recently when I was generously hosted to launch the said book. I've expanded on this, and today I want to reflect on at least 4 of the structural constraints, which I suggest should make it into the policy conference of the ANC. The first is to consider the actual program of the ANC as at 1994. By 1992, according to the Ready to Govern document, the plan was to focus on distribution of land,
distribution to a number of blacks large enough to disrupt white elite concentration, but at the same time to continue productivity in the land. And here, this is where I believe the first structural error was committed. Instead of continuing a distribution program, the ANC soon adopted a restitution program as the focal point of land reform. And yet, by its very nature, a restitution program has embedded limitations. It has no prospect of addressing larger land shortages. This is because the program was always designed to meet a specific historical injustice of forced removals after June 1913, when the Native Land Act became the law. Its potential beneficiaries were limited to about 5 to 6 million people. Those were the victims of forced removals. Yet, our intellectual, legal, financial infrastructure have been spent on restitution. But apart from its potentially limited impact, land restitution has been incredibly poorly managed. Think, for instance, about the sobering comment made by no less a person than a former president of the country, Hare in 2019, who said that if we continue the current trajectory of land restitution, it will take us 35 years to finalize old order claims. If we introduce new order claims, it will take us 143 years. But the restitution program as a whole will take us 709 years to complete. This is why I have joined thinkers in land who question whether it is not time to abandon land restitution entirely. Let me move to the second structural problem. There have been attempts to embark on redistribution, and yet redistribution itself faces architectural structural weaknesses. And the problem is not the scope, but the design. Unlike a claimant-driven restitution program, the redistribution program is driven primarily by landowners. ANC policy cedes control of redistribution to an elite group of landowners. How? Landowners decide which land is to be sold. Land is sold in this country primarily through 3 methods: direct negotiations, advertised sales, or auctions. But on either of those methods, it is the landowner that decides the conditions of the sale. They do so under the program of willing seller, willing buyer. And although there are recent reflections about this program, it still remains the primary mechanism in which land transfers hands from one hand to the next. This also means that landowners decide the price of the land, not the transaction, if they don't like the price. But landowners also decide who the buyer will be. If they don't like the buyer, they withdraw the sale. They also decide what the land is used for. They decide the type of farming which is undertaken on the land. Which is why the research by the Stellenbosch University shows that most land that has been redistributed under the redistribution program is primarily grazing land, not high-value agricultural land. In these ways, then, the entire redistribution value chain is controlled by landowners. And landowners have tended to act in their own interests and not in the interests of the state or the beneficiaries of land reform. The problem, of course, is that the flaw is in the design. We have holus bolus adopted a market-driven land acquisition and distribution strategy. Yet there is a third area in the structural flaws that I try to point to. We have tended to neglect rural communities and their rights to the land. Today, the Freedom Charter's national celebrations are being held in Alice. Once it was a town. It has now largely been classified as a rural area. But there is a further significance. Holding it in the Eastern Cape, which is a primarily rural province. 6 million people live in the province, but 4 million of them live in the former Transkei area. Land reform has tended to abandon and neglect those interests. The ANC passed a law in 1996 known as the Interim Protection of Informal Land Rights Act. The intention was to apply this law during the transition to the democratic order. Because the law is interim in its nature, it applies on a year-to-year basis. It has not been made permanent. And there is no reason not to make it permanent. Its intention was to grant informal rights to the land to persons who live under tribal, customary, or indigenous laws. But what have we actually done for these communities? 3 examples come to mind. The first is the example of the Ingonyama Trust, where the ANC government has allowed the concentration of power to reside in the hands of the chiefs. But the Freedom Charter's message is that the power to control the land belongs to the people. In addition, we have allowed the control of the natural resources to reside in private interests. Recently, we know the example of Shell, but we also know the example of an Australian company that went looking for titanium in Kolobeni. Where was the party?
Your 10 minutes is over.
The third area has been the nexus, chiefs, government, and the private sector to the marginalization and exclusion of traditional communities. It is time to put traditional communities on the table, listen to them, take them seriously. So, the excess of chiefly power, which includes the state and the private sector, has itself exacerbated new forms of expropriation, no longer driven by the state, but driven by the private sector. It is time for the ANC to ask about why it has abandoned traditional. Why do they have to fight for themselves, their own party? Let me return to where I started, and I'm about to conclude.
Advocate, don't return
Why
to
have
where
you
you
paid
started.
so much?
Advocate, don't return where you started. We apologize to Advocate. We know the passion, and let's give him a round of applause. We appreciate, and it was very interesting to listen, very refreshing. And I want to reassure you, Advocate, that we will interact with your good self as we proceed and as we have done over the past 2 years in getting your contributions in this regard. Unfortunately, we have to also accommodate other members of the panel, focused primarily on issues of land, where we come from, the issues around redistribution and restitution, and the tools that we are dealing with. And I want to once more also I appreciate that you take cognizance that will be going towards our policy conference, and hopefully provinces and ourselves will continue to interact with you as we are led by Comrade Jeff Khatebe in the policy discussions leading towards the policy conference. Comrade, let's move on and invite Mr. Monde Kasawe to reflect, and we appeal that it should not exceed 5 minutes. Also raise questions and the recommendations that you think we need to consider as the African National Congress.
Program Director, I'm not sure if I'm audible here.
You can come to the podium if, yes. It has been dominated by the two women here, so let's bring you along for a change.
Enkosi Program Director, mandibulise bethuna endlini. Ndingatyanga xesha ndisithi ku Premier ku Zanemvula ku Deputy Minister Mhlaba nakuyo yonke I leadership ekhoyo, all protocol observed. My name is Monde Nkasawe. I speak today more for the creative sector. And the first point, I have a couple of points that I would like to just highlight quickly within the 5 minutes that I've been given. The first point that I would make is that for us, those who are active in the arts sector, the question today is, what does the Freedom Charter mean to us 67 years after its adoption? A lot of comments has been made, especially by the Premier, about the vision encapsulated in the Freedom Charter. And the first thing to really highlight from a creative perspective is that we consistently have to communicate the messages that are contained in the Freedom Charter. Your idea of a South Africa that belongs to all who live in it. These messages will not communicate themselves, and we will not be issuing media statements about them every day. We have to find ways in which they begin to live amongst us such that their memory is preserved. And I'm saying that the role of the arts is especially critical in storytelling in particular, especially when we're talking about writing, filmmaking, the arts, the crafts and music, in order to sustain the memory of our struggle and to keep alive the ideas of non-racialism, which were very, prominent in Kliptown. And therefore, the utility of the arts in helping to define the South African nationhood today cannot be overstated. You only have to look at the bookstores, the places that sell books in South Africa, where you see the majority of books that are in the shop are books that are coming from outside of our own country. Then you see that that's the challenge of storytelling right there. And with that challenge goes also the death of the ideas that compelled us to fight for our liberation. And therefore, we urgently need to tell the story of our national liberation and in being informed by the African proverb that says, and I quote, "Until the lion has his or her own storyteller, the hunter will always have the best part of the story." Close quote. We also have to find more better ways, maybe the word better is not correct, but the manner in which we celebrate our heritage. We really must focus on this. so that we be clear that it's not just our tribal heritages that talk to our heritage, but the heritage of our struggle, including events of this nature, where we're remembering 67 years of the Freedom Charter. And so the challenge of those who are in the creative sector is to begin to define what we do in relation to what we used to do in the struggle. And I'm saying also the challenge of creating what I would call an NDR hegemony in public iconography. And by that I mean the spaces that we occupy must mostly reflect the ideas we espouse. And so this is really one of those challenges about creatively defining the democratic space in South Africa. And I think lastly, Chair, one other challenge is that we need to look at how easy it is for us to come together and speak English in a country that has a multiplicity of languages. And I'm saying that deliberately, knowing that I am too addressing you speaking English. It's a very dangerous thing that I think we must address. We must begin to occupy that space and contest the dominance of the English language. Otherwise, we are removing from the center those who don't speak English. Chair, let me stop there. Thank you very much.
Comrades, thank you very much, and we appreciate that from creative industries, they were very articulate, on point, and raising a very pertinent issue, the issue of language that we use under these circumstances, using one particular language. But I think, again, because we've got different provinces with different dominant languages, we find ourselves trapped in having to communicate in English. We have a member of the PEC in Limpopo. Remember, they started before us because they were not affected by load shedding. They are now going into that situation shortly, and their program may be interrupted. That's why ngokuzithoba ngicela ukuthi our next expert should take a seat, and then we invite Comrade Poppy Matuba. She's a member of the ANC PEC in Limpopo and the MEC for Health. She is on behalf of the Limpopo province. They've been given the clause that speaks about all shall enjoy equal human rights. Comrade Poppy, if we could connect with Limpopo. Viva Limpopo, viva! Viva, viva Limpopo! Comrade Poppy, we're giving you 3 minutes, and after that you can then proceed, continue communicating and making your remarks directly to Limpopo. Thank you very much, Comrade. 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 Can comrades in Lutuli House try and connect us with Limpopo? Comrade Phoebe and Comrade Shanaz? Limpopo, yeah. Oh my God, I hope I will cook.
They're just taking the mic, and we'll have Comrade Poppy just now.
Can you check the vent behind whether Comrade Bobby is now connected to start? Okay. Over to you, Comrade.
Good to go.
Amandla.
Await.
Thank you, Program Director, Comrade Mhlaba, our NEC members who are on the platform. Receive our revolutionary greetings from Limpopo, PEC, and branches who are here in numbers. We are led by our Deputy Chairperson, Comrade Florence, and our Provincial Secretary, and our DPS, and also our Provincial Treasurer. To all the provincial leadership from different provinces, let me start by thanking all of you, comrades, for making inter-provincial event in our calendar as the African National Congress and all our progressive forces. As you all know, today marks the 67 years since the adoption of the Freedom Charter, and as ANC Limpopo, we've been afforded an opportunity to interface with one of the paramount injunction of the Freedom Charter that says all shall enjoy equal human rights. As we celebrate the 67th anniversary of this historic moment, we have to pause, take a moment and reflect on what has been achieved since the adoption of this hallowed document of our people. We have to be honest and objective about the successes and the shortcomings we have recorded. If indeed all the people of our country do enjoy human rights. Comrades, apartheid was an evil ideas and cherished by people devoid of sense of shame and humanity. But through the Freedom Charter, and all the gallant contribution made by all the people from all walks of life, today we are enjoying the fruits of a democratic dispensation we live under. Comrades, we believe that whilst a lot has been achieved over the past 25 years of our freedom and democracy, a lot more still needs to be done to restore the dignity of our people. Today, comrades, we can report to our architect of the Freedom Charter that the ANC has not only delivered democracy, the ANC government has put in place democratic structures to represent the authentic voices of the people. We can indeed boldly claim that the people are governing. Today, Program Director and comrades, we can report to the 1955 Freedom Charter generation that all national groups have equal rights. There is no one who has more rights by the virtue of his or her membership of a specific national group. However, we will be the first to admit that there are still remnants of individuals who are still trapped in the ugly web of both racism and tribalism. In the spirit of Freedom Charter, no black person shall be shot because they are mistaken for monkeys. It is a very sad and traumatizing experience that we celebrate the 67th anniversary of the Freedom Charter here in our province, Limpopo, when 2 weeks ago, after the brutal assault of a 16-year-old boy by a 50-year-old white male man near Coripis, Pretoria. This episode that unfolded in Groblersdal and many more that our people continue to experience on a daily basis, it's a constant reminder of the resistance to transform South Africa and enjoy equal human rights. Coripis, Pretoria's comrades spewed bile on the graves of those who converged at the Clip Town to conceptualize the Freedom Charter. What saddens us most is that while we continue as Africans and blacks to continue to say, let's reconcile and unite, the voice is only one-sided. We want to hear voices of AfriForum condemning this act, but no, they will never do that. And as long as they are silent, it means they agree with what is happening.
Comrades, we can report to the architect of Freedom Charter that the democratic government had done exceptional well in breathing life to the yearning of housing security and comfort. There's no government in the whole world that has built as many houses for the poor as the ANC-led government in this country. We can report to the delegates of the Historic Congress of the people that everyone in South Africa is today equal before the law. The ANC government has abolished all racist law that advantage the minority and impoverish the overwhelming majority. Without fear of contradiction, comrades, we can report to those who attended the 1955 Congress of the People that indeed the doors of learning and culture have been opened for all, particularly our young people. Yes, indeed, we still have challenges of access to quality education, but access to education we have achieved. Before this ANC government, education to higher education in particular was exclusively preserved for children of the rich and the elites. But today we have made it possible for a child of an unemployed single mother, a child of a domestic worker, like we buried one, who said he accessed higher education due to the ANC-led government. Finances, while there are still challenges, but are no longer a limitation to education. In enjoying equal human rights, we need to restore the dignity of pupils who still do not have decent sanitation. Enjoying equal rights means Michael Komape will not have fallen into a pit toilet at a school in 2014, almost 20 years into democracy. Enjoying equal human rights, comrades, means our learners should not walk long and dangerous roads to access education. The children should enjoy access to quality education in the same way as their counterparts from the affluent settlement. Comrades, the matter of the land is topping a list of priorities on the ANC government, and the agency of the land distribution program can no longer be postponed. Access to land, it's access to dignity. Therefore, it's access to human rights. So for as long as our people remain without a land, the face of poverty in South Africa shall remain black. Comrades, the architect of Freedom Charter wished for a complete human rights. Human rights simply means access to free health, access to availability of education. Human rights means that an elderly lady must not be subjected to blindness because of a cataract, a procedure to remove of which does not even take 30 minutes. Enjoying equal human rights simply means a child born with a club foot must not be subjected to permanent disability because we have failed as government to correct it at birth. It simply means people cannot die of cholera or typhoid because we cannot provide them with clean water and sanitation or even treatment after they have been. Human rights means access to a free education. It simply means access to job creation. Human rights means the availability of poverty, apartheid, spatial planning, and women.
We had asked Limpopo to speak on the clause that says all shall be equal before the law. So Comrade Poppy will continue communicating and reflecting on the Freedom Charter for the audience. Yes, Limpopo, let's give her a round of applause. And to all our comrades in different provinces, siyanicela ngomoya wesonto ukuthi stick to your clause. Don't swallow everything. Each province, each according to his or her ability. Angithi siyavumelana? Yes, isivumelwano sethu sonke. So we're pleading with all our heads of organizing and the provincial secretaries. Let's make sure that our comrades, when they make the input on the platform, they stick to the brief as it was communicated to all of them. Ukuthi omunye nomunye unequzwana lakhe okumele ukuthi aphawule ngalo. Let's move on then and invite an expert on issues of governance, an analyst, Mr. Zamikaya Maseti. He's not here as an advisor. Ngumtu wase South Africa onolwazi uyasincedisa nje apha kuthi kuhulumeni so nimbona udiye nje labandoda semva kwakhe afana nobabuzamikhaya babuzamikhaya. Thank you dear ngokusigcinela yena.
Mandibulise Comrade Nomvula, ndibulise Comrade Math, ndibulise no Premier nakubo bonke ke abathunywa abalapha. Ndikhula ke le Freedom Charter kuthiwa kukhalwa ngayo emazweni. And now we have to reflect honestly and genuinely whether post 1994 we managed to deliver on its promises. Comrades will remember that in 1994, when the democratic government was inaugurated, they adopted the Reconstruction and Development White Paper, which in a way carried some of those aspirations. What then disappointed around 1996 was the fact that, and then we started seeing policies like Hare, and we debated, especially those of us who were in the student movement, South African Communist Party, as to whether the Reconstruction Development document indeed carried those aspirations. But unfortunately, because of the hegemonic ideological positions at the time, I would argue that the democratic and socialist forces were defeated. I just want to deal with some of the issues that Advocate Ngogai Tobi raised earlier. I'm raising this precisely because I have this agricultural economic background given my experience. We all know that the Eastern Cape is a rural province followed by Northern Cape and some parts of KZN. So the issue of land reform becomes very, very critical. Let's look briefly at the land reform policy which was adopted by the democratic government in 1997, the white paper on land reform in South Africa. That white paper was premised on 3 pillars. It was redistribution, of course, restitution, and the security of tenure. And I agree with the advocate that those pillars were not in sync. And I would like the policy conference, Comrade Nomvula, to re-look at the pillars which underpinned the South African land reform policy. The difficulty, and I've been arguing this with other scholars in the field of land reform policy, was that somewhere in the middle of the policy implementation, there was this very foreign principle of the willing buyer, willing seller, which was not part of this policy. And it really slowed the slow pace of land reform in South Africa. If, for instance, you go back to the 2006 targets, our democratic government set a target of 30% of agricultural land that would have been transferred to the masses of our people by 2016. Unfortunately, only 6% of land was transferred to our people. I think the study by the United Nations indicated that 800 million hectares of land from 1997 to 2018 were transferred to, well, that's agricultural land, of course, to the beneficiaries of land reform. But unfortunately, only 10% used productively. We go back again and look at to those beneficiaries of land reform. Very few received support. If you said there is no agricultural infrastructure, no dipping tanks, there is not even an indication of what is it that is to be done about those agricultural commodities which were mainly followed by those commercial farmers. So